Welcome to the Quick Start Takeoff training video. This video is being recorded using the upcoming January 2025 release version of Buzzbit. Some of the features demonstrated are not available in older software versions starting with V24. First, the Help menu is where you watch the What's New video to keep up with new features and also schedule training. For larger companies, we offer scheduled weekly trainings dedicated specifically to your company, so please let us know if you're interested. Now, let's get started. First, a quick tour of Buzzbit's layout. The Projects tab keeps a list of all your bids organized into projects. These projects can contain multiple versions of a bid. Each bid version can have revision drawing sets, if issued, and Buzzbit organizes all these drawing and overlays automatically. The Plans tab is where you take off quantities and build assemblies. The Assembly tab contains 4 tabs, allowing you to filter, sort, and explore in detail all the information contained in assemblies you created during the takeoff. The All tab gives you a complete list of all the assemblies you built back on the Plans tab. The Crew tab allows you to review and adjust labor class pay settings or overtime requirements. The Labor review allows you to globally adjust labor for a single or multiple assemblies. The Material review covers all materials used in assemblies and allows you to submit material quotes to vendors for pricing. The Estimates tab is the final stop in the bidding process with tabs that allow you to review the cost and sell price for assemblies, enter subcontractors and general conditions, and finally adjust markups. This Quick Start Takeoff video will cover the Projects tab, Plans tabs, and part of the Assemblies tab. The remaining tabs will be covered in the Quick Start Estimating video. Buzzbit organizes bids into projects. The Medical Clinic project has 3 bid versions that were created as plans were issued. Bid 1.0 was created with 80% design docs, Bid 1.1 with 90% design docs, and the final Bid 1.2 was created with a 100% plan set. Revision plan sets are added using the Add Revision link here on the right. Revision sets can be added to any existing or new bid as needed. In this project, only one of these bids can succeed and be the final one. The radio button to the right of the bid name is used to select the active bid within this project. For alternates, the checkbox on each alternate row is used to turn on or off alternates that will be included in the final bid total. Buzzbit allows you to select a non-active bid and advance to the other tabs, but doing so will display a flashing warning triangle to let you know you are not viewing the active bid in this project. If you want to hide earlier non-active bid iterations, there is a slider switch located on the project title row that limits the bids in the project to only show the active bid. There are also icons to create a new project using this one as a template or delete the entire project. Deleting a project only moves it to the recycle bin. From here, bids and projects can be restored or permanently deleted. Let's add a project and load some drawings. On all lists throughout Buzzbit, the Insert, Enter, and Delete keys will add, open, or remove entries from a list. So on the Projects tab, if I want to add a new project, I can click the Add Project link here. This opens the Project Setup window. This window contains both the project information and bid information. The project information will stay constant, but the bid information and possibly plan sets will change as you add revision bids, alternates, and change orders. By default, Buzzbit names the first bid in a project as base bid, but you can change that if needed. Pressing the Enter key always advances to the next data entry field. We'll call this the MediClinic project. Press Enter. Data entry fields with a down arrow like market sector are multi-select lists and usually have a gear located to the right, used to manage these lists. These types of entries are also keyboard lookup enabled. So typing the letters MED will filter the list to the selection containing those letters. I'll leave the default bid name and set the status to estimating and click here to select a PDF file for my desktop. This loads the plan set and presents you with a message that asks you to please look at the page names to the left. If the page names look correct, with no characters or numbers in front of the discipline designating letter, in this case A for architectural, you can skip the renaming process and load the drawings by clicking the Skip Rename button. This loads the drawings organized by discipline. Here you can see the architectural, electrical, mechanical drawings. Clicking on Apply will advance to the Plans tab and display our drawing ready to start our bid. Here you can see a drop-down list of all the drawings organized by discipline. Now that we have loaded the plans using the architect's plan page names, we need to take a quick look to verify page links are working properly. In order for links to work, the plans must be named correctly. To verify detail links are working, we go to any page with detail callouts and look for the green highlight color, indicating the links are active. If links are not active, it's likely the architect's names contained a different layout than the plan set. This is fixed by running the Auto Rename feature. When loading the plan set, move the red box over the page number and position the blue box over the page title block. The mouse wheel zooms the page in and out, and you can drag the lower right corner of this window if you want a larger plan view. Before we click the Auto Rename Pages button, use the page preview arrows to advance the pages and make sure the title block still looks good, like this. Now click the Auto Rename Pages button, and BuzzBid renames the pages like this. Let's load one more plan set to see what happens when all the plan page number and title blocks are not in the same location. In this plan set, after running the auto rename process, I have 280 pages in the successful column and 44 in the failed column. In this case, the title blocks moved. To correct this, reposition the title blocks and click Retry Failed Pages. This moves the failed pages to the successful column. Sometimes the cover sheet page, which has no title block, will get left behind in the unsuccessful column. In this case, double-click the page name and retype and press Enter to move it to the successful column. When these are imported, you can see the civil drawings did not go into the correct folder because they were not preceded with the letter C for civil. In this case, I can select the first one in the list and shift-click to select the group, then right-click and change the plan category to civil. The plan list also has a handy preview window that allows you to see the page title block while you are retyping the name. If you would like the plan grouping to display in a different order, that is controlled here under Tools, Options, Plans tab, where you can add, change, or move up and down the grouping order. The new plan order will take effect when you change to a different project. Now that we have looked at loading plan sets, let's look at a project with multiple building as a bid. The park has plan set for 2 separate buildings. Each building has a dedicated tab located here, allowing you to add revision sets per building. Adding tabs for additional plan sets is done here using the Add Plan Set gear. Clicking here allows you to add or rename plan set tabs.
Whenever you load additional plan sets, we'll look at the setup for this project here. I had an original plan set here, and then I had 3 additional revision sets that came in. Each revision set, you can see that this page superseded the original page all the way through the sets, so that whenever I go to the plans page, you can see the pages listed at the bottom. On this page right here, this is the revision set I'm looking for here. And this is the original page over here. If I want to activate the overlay, I click the original page set here, and it will turn on the overlay for this page.
Let's review the controls. Starting at the top are basic controls to undo and redo takeoff steps. Adjust decimal places for takeoff quantities, and expand and collapse lists throughout BuzzBid. A camera icon that will copy and paste a screen capture inside or outside of BuzzBid. The print button for printing pages with legends and takeoff. The audit filter will be covered later in this video. We covered the setup dialog earlier. Next, we have the text search control that lets you search the plans for specific words or phrases. The B icon launches your customer center followed by the download icon, which will check for any new projects, material quotes, or software updates. BuzzBid checks this every 30 minutes automatically, but clicking this will check at any point between the auto 30-minute check-ins. Over to the right, we have the bid navigator that allows you to switch between bids, alternates, and change orders. Here you can see the active bid 1.2 is currently being viewed because it is highlighted in a blue color. You can change the bid view by selecting one of the alternates, like this. Now our Alt 2.0 is the current bid view, and the Plans tab will display all takeoff created with this alternate. Please note that the current bid or alternate is shown in blue and displays here and at the top of the takeoff list. Also, the bid navigator also allows you to turn on and off the active bid or alternate. In this case, I can activate Alt number 1, and you can see the project total increase. The Plans tab allows for up to 6 takeoff windows with multiple scales per page. There are 2 ways to open an additional takeoff windows. Clicking the icon on the right side of the main Plans tab, here, or when you have linked details, hovering the mouse over the detail preview click will open this detail in a new takeoff window. You can position these windows to any location, and when closed and reopened will remember their last position. When additional plan windows are open, if you want to use them as a viewing window only, you can hide the takeoff tools with this icon located here, collapsing the tools. Also, when additional windows are open, 2 more icons show up after the B icon. One to close all windows at once and another to link the scrolling and zoom for both windows. Here I have the floor plan in one window and the ceiling plan is another. Clicking this turns the icon blue for both windows. Now zooming and panning is synchronized between the 2 windows. Additional plan windows also have the bid navigator located here, so you view plans for different bid versions, alternates, and changes while looking at the base bid. They'll click here to close all additional windows, and let's review the toolbar icons. Now let's review the icons across the top of the Plans tab. Starting on the left, through the end of the peach toolbar is dedicated to plan navigation. This is the first page in the plans. This is the last page in the plans. The home and end keys will do the same operation. The blue chevron lights up, indicating there is a page in that direction that contains takeoff quantities. Clicking here jumps to the next page with takeoff in that direction. This is the next and previous pages in the plan set. The page up and down keys do the same. The current page display has 2 functions. It displays a list of all pages in the plan set and also searches for pages when part of the page number or description are typed. Typing here will cache the plan list to start filtering plans to display that match the input. Typing door filters the list down to page containing my door details and schedule. If I type ELE, I can find my exterior elevations. In this case, I'll type floor and select the second floor plan. The next 2 icons are the arrow selector for selecting objects on the takeoff page and the pan tool for panning the drawing. When the cursor is over the plan page, pressing the space bar will move between the takeoff cursor or other tool back to the arrow selector. This also works switching back and forth between tools and the arrow selector. Selecting the dimension ruler and pressing the space bar changes from ruler to arrow and back. Selecting a takeoff assembly for this partition, pressing the space bar changes the cursor to the arrow selection tool. Panning the plan window works like this. Pressing and holding the right mouse button changes the cursor to the pan tool, allowing you to drag the window in any direction. Also, holding down the Shift key and rolling the mouse wheel moves the page from left to right. There are two options for zooming the window. By default, rolling the mouse will zoom the window centered on the cursor location. So if I put the cursor here and roll the mouse wheel, it zooms to that location. Moving to the other side of the building and using the mouse wheel zoom to this location. There's an alternate setting under Tools options here called Alternate Mouse Wheel. Selecting this option will require you hold down the Control key and roll the mouse wheel to zoom. Rolling the mouse wheel without the Control key will move the page right and left. The next two icons send you to the last page visited in either direction, like this. Followed by Zoom Tools for Zoom to Full Page or Zoom to Takeoff Extents. Clicking the Full Page Zoom tool one time will zoom the current page to full page view. Clicking this tool twice will reset all pages in the plan set. Next, we have the Zoom Takeoff Extents, which zooms the page as close as possible, showing all takeoff for the current page. Clicking twice sets all pages in the plan set to zoom extents. Our last tool is the zoom icon, which has two icons to the right and left, allowing you jump back to a previously zoomed view on the current page. This next set of controls in blue are your computer vision tools. I'm going to skip these for now and demonstrate them when we start performing computer vision takeoff later in this video. The next two icons hide or show the takeoff or plan page. Sometimes it's helpful to hide takeoff like ceilings as they're being counted, like this. Temporarily hiding the plan page is useful for takeoff like fireproofing, which allows you to see the pattern of counted steel members. The next two icons are for splicing linear and area takeoff into segments in case the computer vision counted takeoff across a match line and you need to trim the takeoff. Next, we have the scale setting, allowing you to set the page scale or calculate a scale if needed by drawing a line and entering its length. Next is the location selector, allowing you to assign all or part the takeoff on this page to a location. We will skip the WBS input because this is currently being recoded into phases. The dimension tool for measuring on the page. The next tool is used to create detail and multi-count views. These views can have different scale than the page scale, allowing you to have multiple scales per page. Last, we have the highlighter and the annotations, which contains the text tool, image legend, and other tools. Takeoff panel has 6 tabs, starting with the Takeoff tab, which holds assemblies as you build and count quantities. The Library tab holds a list of saved assemblies for reuse across all bids. Anytime you build an assembly on the Takeoff tab, you have the option to add it to your library for future use. The Groups tab allows you to store groups of takeoff for reuse within a specific bid. This is helpful for common areas that repeat throughout the bid, like lobbies and stairwells. The Views tab holds a list of all the detail, linked, and multi-count views you created within the current bid. Down a little further is the results for any text searches you have run. The Locations tab is used to manage all bid locations, like a building with floors 1 through 3. WBS is soon to be replaced with new functionality called Phases in an upcoming release, so we will skip this tab. Now let's review how page links work in BuzzBid. When you load your drawings, BuzzBid automatically links all of your details at a page level within your plan set. Linked details display a green highlight over the page number. Moving the mouse over a detail displays 4 link options. First, you can jump to the page containing this detail by clicking in the green area. like this. I'll use the Return to Last Page icon to jump back. Second, you can open this detail page in a new Takeoff window by clicking here. I can close this window with the X or use the Close All Windows icon here. Third, you can mark this detail as out of scope. And fourth, you can click the Link Detail button to create a scale detail view, allowing you to count quantities inside a detail and transfer that takeoff if needed. Clicking here takes me over to page A3.1, with a prompt to draw a box around the detail for 3 on A3.1. I'll click and drag from upper left to lower right, and at the bottom you can see the message says Name and Scale Found. If the name and scale message doesn't appear, the PDF may not contain readable text, but most plans work as demonstrated here. Whenever I release the mouse button, it sets the scale and names the linked detail view. There are 4 controls inside a linked detail view. First, the Dimension tools lets you measure inside the detail. Second, the Transfer Takeoff icon moves takeoff from inside this detail to any other page, adjusting for any change in scale. Third, the Select Assembly option allows you to select an existing assembly to associate this detail to. And last, you can create a new assembly from this window with the detail already linked, like this. Controls at the top allow you to delete or zoom the detail, and this last icon here returns you to the page where the link was created. Now that the detail is linked, hovering over this link displays a thumbnail of the detail. Clicking on the thumbnail opens the detail in an additional takeoff window like this. Creating a detail that has multiple views works like this. Here I'll link a detail with multiple views. Clicking here prompts me to put a link around the first detail. In this case, 10 on A4.1. Next, I'm prompted to link 9 on A4.1. When the last detail in a series is linked, the detail will zoom to full screen, letting you know it is complete. Now returning to the beginning, we have multiple link markers for each detail view.
Now let's build some assemblies. There are several ways to build assemblies in BuzzBid. One of the ways is on the takeoff list over here. You can press the Insert key or click the Add Assembly button here to add a new assembly. I'll of course leave this just as it is and apply it. And there's my first assembly. The second way you can add assemblies is to go to the library. And you can pick several items off of any category here. I'll just click a couple of assemblies and add them to the takeoff list. And it works like that. Those, of course, are stored assemblies that I built previously. Another way to build assemblies that I kind of like is to use the detail view here to draw a detail view, which means draw a box around this type A partition. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have the Add Assembly option. From here, clicking Add Assembly opens up a brand new assembly, names it the name of the detail, like that. I'm going to make it an A1 I'll show you in just a reason. I'm going to call it Interior Walls and make it 14 foot tall. So we put into BuzzBid the code that if you create a new assembly and it has no quantity or no items in it, when you duplicate it, it's going to rotate the last number here. So if I duplicate it here, it's going to say A2. Another shortcut way to do that is to click Add Assembly here with the Shift key down, and there's the A3, 4, 5, like that. And that covers all of these because each one of these has that detail link to it right there. Another way to add assemblies to the takeoff list here with the detail view is to select the detail view like this And as you draw a box around this, it will automatically create the assembly and add it to the takeoff list. So I'm going to put the detail view here on the type B partition, hold down the shift key and draw a box around it, and there's my type B partition. I'll repeat this for the C and the D, and basically that's what I'm doing. I'm just grabbing things here that I'm going to build during the takeoff. If I open this type D, this type E assembly here, you can see the type E detail is captured with it, and it named it the partition type E. Now let's take a closer look at the assembly details for linears, areas, and counts. We'll start off with our partition type 1 here. To open it, I can double click it or hit the pencil here. I'm going to double click. When I press the Enter key, I advance to the class. This is for reporting and grouping. If this were a parapet, I could change it to that. It's keyboard sensitive as far as typing up. I'll put it back to INT for interior walls. Next to that is the pattern here, if you want to give it a specific pattern or choose a specific color for it. The gear here is the control for the color palette and the assembly classes. If you said, I want all parapets to always be blue, then anytime you choose this class for a linear assembly, or put parapet on any class of assembly, it's always going to be blue. I'll reset that and turn it off. This is the name. If you build your assembly and it's something you want to save to your library, if you put a name here, like I call this ABC assembly, you'll notice the link down here to add and update the library lights up. So clicking here gives you the option to put this assembly, save it to your library here if you want. I'll take that off. This is the height of it. The width is usually controlled by the computer vision and usually starts off at like. Then all assemblies have a dimension 1, 2, and 3. These are automatically turned on and off as you add items to the assembly. Over to the right, we have starter studs for segment counts. In other words, every time the wall turns, if I'd like to add an extra stud, I can do that. And then we have an option here to connect. If I want the linears when they touch other linears to connect to them, here's the notes field. This, of course, is your detail link if you've added one. And then down below is where you put the parts and pieces that it's going to take to build this. The lower half of the assembly detail lets you assign a status color to it. If you pick a status color, it will stay that color until something changes the price of this assembly. The only two exceptions to that rule are if it changes in quantity or a material price. To the right, we have additional information. It tells you the average segment length. In other words, if I had 100 linear over the wall and it turned 10 times, it would tell me the average segment length was 10 foot. It also tells the total crew days, and if you select specific line items down here for certain labor items, it'll tell you the selected crew days. Also, anytime you create a new assembly, we know the library is available to us over here on the Takeoff tab. It's also available inside of assemblies. So if I click on the library tab, I can look for anything. I can click on the groupings and open them. Or if I wanted to type something like ACT, if any of the descriptions contain ACT, it'll do a quick search. The escape key clears the search, so if I type COL for columns, it finds a number of columns there. Selecting one of these, of course, will reset everything to be set up for a column. Now that we've looked at our linear assembly, let's go ahead and look at the other two, counts. I got columns for counts and acoustical ceilings for area. So we'll open our column assembly here, which is a count. I'll double click it here. It's set to a count. The shape I chose was a square. You have several different options to choose from. The class is columns. All of the other settings are pretty much the same as we covered in our linear, so I'll click apply. to close that. And I'll go ahead and open our area assembly. That's our acoustical ceiling here. So I'll double click this, and it is set to an area. It has a class. And the thing about areas is they can have a grid pattern. You can have a 2x2 or a 2x4, or you can create a custom grid pattern. You also have the option for colors here. The depth field here is used for calculating volumes, such that if you were doing 4-inch slab on grade concrete, you would give it a depth here and calculate volumes here for my concrete. You can also give your areas a slope if you want, for like roofing 412 pitch. There are a number of right mouse click features available over on the Takeoff list. I'd like to cover one of those now, and that is the ability to display our assemblies grouped by class. So if I right mouse click and I turn on Show Class, you can see them grouped according to their class. If you want to control the order of these classes, setting up the default order for assembly classes is done under Database, Assembly Classes. Within here, you have the option to move them up or down in whatever order you would like them to display in. Once you've created a bid, however, I'll go ahead and double click this assembly to go into it. If you want to change the classes within a bid after it's started, you go into an assembly and use the gear icon to adjust the classes within this bid. Before we start Takeoff, a quick note about plan sets. BuzzBid runs computer vision algorithms to analyze the underlying PDF and assist you with counting. Most plans operate as shown, but occasionally you will get PDFs that contain TIFF images, and in that case, computer vision has no information to work with, which puts you back into manual takeoff mode. The computer vision toolbar is located here in blue. The first icon turns on and off computer vision completely, so if it's off, you're in full manual takeoff mode. There's also additional computer vision tools for locating walls by wall tags, finding doors by shapes, counting corners for trims, finding shapes and shapes with text inside of them, and last, for finding and counting steel members. Starting with linear takeoff, I've created a type A partition here, and it has a 0 quantity on dimension 1. So whenever I select this from the takeoff list and move out over the drawing, because it has a 0 quantity, the computer vision starts analyzing the drawing underneath, looking for a pattern to lock onto. I can lock onto one side of a wall like this, or I can lock onto the partition like this, the 8-inch wall here, whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to settle over the 3 5/8 wall. Now that I've selected that, I can count other 3 5/8 walls with one click like this. Anytime I move the cursor over it, I'm not pressing the key in any way. Anytime I move the cursor over it, it highlights that, showing what it's going to count if I click it once. If I do click this wall, it stays selected. You'll notice that once I've locked onto the 3 5/8 walls, I can move over the 8-inch walls and it cannot see this wall over here. Now I'm going to move over to my type B partition, which has a 0 quantity. So when I come out over the plans, it starts looking for something to lock onto over here like this. I'm going to move over to the B partitions and start counting them with one click like this. And this is a good time to note that whenever the cursor is over the plans it shows you, you can see on the cursor partition type B. If I press the space bar, it goes back to the selection tool. With the selection tool showing, if I select on the type A partition, it's selected in the takeoff list over to the left, and when I press this space bar again, I'm now taking off type A partitions, so I can do this. When counting segments, they stay selected until you hit the next segment like this. If you make a mistake, you can always press the delete key or Control Z to undo several steps. If you have a situation where you only want to draw part of a wall, like this right here, clicking the type B wall goes all the way through. You can click to create the wall, then move over the control points on the ends like this to back it up to where you want. Another way to do this is to hover over the wall, and when it highlights, click and drag to take off the portion you want to count. Now let's cover the concept of double click to take off multiple partitions at one time. In this case, all of these type A partitions are the same pattern and they're all touching. So I could count them one at a time like that, or I can hover over one of them and double click to count the entire group at one time. Another example of using one-click takeoff, all of these walls in this area are type A, but I can see that if I double-click here, because the pattern matches, it's going to go over here and start counting these type B walls. So I want to confine it to this area right here. So I do that by clicking here once and the bottom down here once. Now when I double-click here, all of the rest of the touching walls will be counted in one shot without going over into the hallways. Now let's take a look at control points for linears. Whenever I create a linear, it stays selected and I can see control points, one in the middle to move it this way, or I can grab the end of it and stretch it if I want it to come over here and cover this entryway. Also on the center control here, if I hold down the shift key while I drag this, it will curve the wall like this. I'll control Z to undo that. There's also a rotation tool over here, and when I hold down the shift key it'll rotate smoothly, or I release it and it snaps. Linears also have the ability to automatically match the width of the wall that they're placed next to. In this case I created a assembly number 3 for blocking. When I click on this and move over the plans, because it has no quantity, it's trying to figure out what pattern to lock onto. But if I place it next to another linear, it sets itself at the width of the partition that I set it next to. So I can come into these areas and add blocking like this. Another example of this, I've created an assembly here to swap out the MR board for the X58s on the inside of a room here. So I can create this assembly, move next to it. It matches the width of the wall it's next to, and with a double click I can count the entire interior of that room in one operation. One click linear takeoff is very handy for taking off finishes on the insides of rooms. In this case I have an assembly for eggshell paint color 1. I'll go ahead and select this, and when I move over next to this wall here, I can select the edge of the room just like this. A double click here takes off the entire side of this room. Now that it's found or locked onto a pattern, it's much easier to click here and click here to count the insides of the rooms. If I go up to my restrooms up here, I need to take off latex paint inside of these for waterproofing. I'll click on this, move to the edge of the wall till it highlights like this, and double click here and double click here like that. When it comes to selecting takeoff, if I start in the upper left and go to the lower right like this, it will select only the takeoff objects inside of the rectangle. If I go from the other direction, started in the upper right and going to the lower left, it will select everything that it touches. When taking off linears, sometimes it's helpful to disable computer vision momentarily during the takeoff process. Here I have some blocking I'd like to put over here, but computer vision keeps locking onto these shelves instead of letting me get next to the partition where I want to. So I can place the cursor where I want it, hold down the shift key and click and drag and draw where I want. Now when I release the shift key, it snaps and I can put my blocking right there. Now let's take a look at how manual takeoff works whenever we turn computer vision off. In this case, I'll use the icon here to turn off the computer vision, and I'll draw our type A partitions. I can click the left mouse button, hold and drag, or I can click and release and move it, and then click once to anchor each point like this, and double click to end it. When counting walls with computer vision on, you'll notice that when I click here, it goes through the door opening but stops at the cased opening. That's because computer vision is set to stop at any opening greater than 4 foot. Now let's look at finding and counting walls by wall tag using computer vision. On our blue computer vision toolbar here, I'll click Wall Tag Tool. And when I move over the WP15s, you can see that it can see all those partitions. In this case, I already have one over on my takeoff list on the left, so I can select it. Otherwise, I would add a new assembly for it. So here I'll select the WP15, and you'll see that the computer vision went out and found and counted 635 lineal foot of that partition. Wall tags are not perfect, however, we are at the mercy of where the architect put the wall tags. So in this case, you can see I had a wall tag here and here, but I did not have one here. So you have to go in and do some touch up using wall tags. Wall tags are a good start, but they're not perfect. When using computer vision, we always expect the estimator to give a visual check and see if they agree with what's being counted. If by chance you're using a plan and wall tags don't behave correctly, or say acoustical ceilings aren't counting as expected, you can always click on Help, Send the current page for review. This will send us the single page only, and we will do our best to see if there's any adjustments we can make to our algorithms that will make it perform better in the future. Now that we've finished our linear takeoffs, let's move on to area takeoff objects. I'll use my 2x2 standard ceiling here. And in this case, I'm going to turn computer vision off right here so I can show you that if you want to click and drag, you can take off a room manually that way, or you can click around the outsides of a room this way and then double click to finish the takeoff. Now let's turn on computer vision and see how it works. With computer vision on, I can click on the grid and take off the entire room at once like this. Please be sure to click on the grid and not the light fixture so that if you do that, it would count the light fixture only. In this case, I'm going to count the grid ceilings this way. You can hide with this icon right up here, you can hide the ceilings that have been counted so far, so it looks like this. I'll click this to turn it back on. The other thing that you can do, there's two options here. You can click once to take off one room at a time, or you can double click to take off all of the rooms at one time. Now in this case, all of these rooms were ceiling type L2, so they all counted that pattern, and I'm okay doing that. In this case, I'll start over and let's pretend like the 2x2 fine line went in the hallways. I would do that, and then I could take the L2 for the standard grid and tile and double click to take off the rest of that, so I get this effect right here. If you want to back out your light fixtures, when you click on any right mouse click on any area object, you get the cutout option. Here I'll drag and it should go through and count the light fixtures like this. The thing that's important to remember is I always need you to take a visual sweep to see if you agree it caught everything. In this case, I have one light fixture that got away from me, so I need to go add that manually. Also, it only counts the backouts within that specific assembly, in this case the 2x2. If I want to back out the light fixtures from the 2x2 tegular fine line, I have to click in this area here to get those. The L5 ceilings were also used here inside of the conference room, so I'll click there. If you decide to set a grid pattern for your areas, in this case I set my ACT to 2x2, whenever you apply the takeoff to the page, we make every effort to align the grid to the underlying ceiling plan so that it matches. There are exceptions to this, of course, like a hallway where they change the grid pattern and don't give us a clean break. Grid patterns also have some interesting behavior in that when I click on one of them, it shows me the whole tiles in green and the border cuts in red. Inside of acoustical ceilings, inside of your areas here with the pattern, we have the option to calculate things like the full tiles or the partial tiles. Taking off chipboard ceilings looks something like this. I'll click here and count my drywall ceilings like this, or I can turn everything off and count them like this. Now let's talk about count assemblies. You can always add count assemblies here manually with the add assembly, or we're going to talk about the next four icons on the computer vision toolbar. We already covered the first two. So the first one is for counting door frames. So if I click on this and move over the door frames, I can select an assembly or create a new one, and it will count all the door frames. We always ask you to give a visual sweep of the plans and see if you agree with everything, because sometimes the plans, the PDFs are too convoluted and it might fool the computer vision. In this case, the door right down here got left out, so you have to add that one manually. So always check your plans. The next item is for counting corner trim. In the case of corner trim, you see it's grayed out. The corner trim icon becomes active anytime you have linears on the page like this, and you click on each item like the corners here, corner bead 10 foot. Now this item is active, so if I click this, BuzzBid will go out and count the corners for you like that. Remember that if you have items on your plans that you do not want to apply corners to, you can turn those off, like the blocking here. I turned the blocking off because I didn't want it to add corners for the blocking. So if you have exterior walls, you want to turn those off and then click on your corner bead and apply the counts. The next item is for searching for symbols on the plans. In other words, if I'm looking for a symbol here, like this symbol right here, you can see it finds all of those rectangles, or this symbol here. It's not necessarily looking for the B3, it's just looking for that symbol, this symbol here. If you want to search specific counts here with text in them like this, in this case, if I move over the K windows here, I can add an assembly to count all the K windows around the property, or the L windows. The last icon is not a count icon, it's for finding and counting fireproofing members. Now that we've covered the basics, let's review some of the more advanced operations in BuzzBid. Anytime you move the cursor over selected Takeoff, you get the multifunction wheel. Multifunction wheel allows you to rotate the selected Takeoff, delete it, flip it horizontally. Work breakdown structure will skip because that's changing in an upcoming release. You can flip it vertically. You can assign it to a location, or you can create a group. You can create a group for the Takeoff, or you can duplicate it. We're going to concentrate on two of the most commonly used functions on the wheel: assigning Takeoff to a location and creating groups. Here we're looking at the Locations tab over here, and I can see there is no Takeoff assigned to any of the locations here, floors 1 through 8. Moving over the multifunction wheel, I can go here and the selected Takeoff can be assigned to floor 2. Now you can see floor 2 is bold, indicating that there's Takeoff on that floor. Now let's take a look at creating groups with the multifunction wheel. I'll select some Takeoff here, move over the option to create a group. This takes me to the Groups tab here, and I'll type in typical restroom like this. So now I'll go ahead and take the Takeoff on the page and delete it, and show you that when you select a group and you move over the page, it's searching the plans underneath to see if it can find a match. When it comes over one, it does this. It lights up, indicating that if I click anywhere here, it's going to drop that Takeoff like that. Groups also have the ability to multi-count with a double click. I'll go to my Groups tab here, and I'll go down to my Type C suites here, And when I move over the plan, you can see anytime it sees a matching type C suite here, it highlights it. So I can click these one at a time regardless of rotational angle or orientation and take them off like this, one at a time. I'm going to back that up with Control Z. What I can also do is move over one of these and double click it for it to count all of those at once like this. Now you can see all of the C suites have been counted automatically. Groups also have the ability to highlight suites on a floor plan, but this is limited to the group name and the text label within the room matching. In this case, if I click on the Type A suite here, you'll notice the name matches the label inside of the room, so it highlights. Same thing for the Type Cs, they automatically highlight. But you'll notice the text label on my Type B unit here and my group label don't match, so when I click on it, no highlighting. The purpose of highlighting the suites was to assist the estimator in visually locating typical groups on a page. Typical suites showing the highlighted room name or not will have no effect on their ability to count with a single click. In this case, the Type B suite, the name doesn't highlight, I can still click on it, and because the pattern matches, I'm able to count it like that. In order for double-click to count all occurrences of a typical suite on a page, the room labels must be clearly marked. In this case, all of the Type C units are clearly marked, but if this unit right here did not have a Type C label, and I were to double-click here, this particular room would have been missed in the double-click because we're using the label as a matching routine. In the case where a room was not labeled and a double-click did not count it, the estimator would have to go back and manually click on that room to count it. We always count on the estimator to visually verify auto counting because PDFs are not perfect. There are several right mouse click functions available to you for selected takeoff. Here I have some selected takeoff. When I move over it, I get the multifunction wheel. If I right mouse click, this first group of options we've already covered, so the next four are what I'd like to concentrate on. We have an option to break out the assemblies, which basically duplicates and reassigns the quantities. We can move this takeoff to an alternate, or we can copy the takeoff to an alternate, or we can set the takeoff to a negative value. Anytime you select takeoff on a page like this, it automatically selects the assemblies over on the takeoff list over here. The right mouse click functions available for takeoff assemblies is different. So here I have a number of assemblies highlighted. So if I right mouse click, a lot of these functions in here will affect all of the highlighted assemblies. For instance, if I want to send them to a folder or change their class, height, reassign their takeoff to something else, or move them to an alternate, which will move those assemblies and all of their takeoff across all of the pages in this bid to an alternate. I can copy those assemblies and all their takeoff to an alternate. Also, items that are put into alternates can also be converted to change orders. I can also change their status color if needed, like this. Two additional features I'd like to cover are the text search tool, which allows me to click here and type in any particular text I'm looking for. In this case, I'll type in wood. When it lights up in the first box, that tells you it found it on this particular page. This tells you it found it somewhere else throughout the plans. When I click here, it's going to change from the Takeoff to the Views tab here. And it's searching down here, and these are all the pages where it found the word wood. So if I click on, for instance, say the second floor ceiling plan here, it goes to that page and you can see it found the word wood here. You can run as many searches as you want here. The next option that I'd like to talk about is, I'll move back to the takeoff list and go back to our previous view, is the audit filter. Now the audit filter is right here. And when you turn this on, it parks itself on the lower half of the takeoff screen here. This can, of course, be dragged to another monitor somewhere if you want, but what it does is it allows you to filter the takeoff for any piece. Every time I touch it, it will go to that piece of takeoff and highlight. So everything that has been done here. If this is a bid where someone else did part of the takeoff and you copied and pasted their portion of the takeoff, you would be able to go to the users directory here and highlight the other user and see which pieces of takeoff they contributed to this bid. Another use for this might be to filter this job. You can see currently the bid is $923,000. If I filter it down to, say, just the bulkheads here, it limits the takeoff list to only the bulkheads, and the job is cut down to $31,000 here. So this means I can click anywhere here and it will take me to the takeoff list and highlight the bulkheads that I had taken off. One last feature that I guess I should cover, I almost missed it, was the printing capability. I'm going to clear the filter here. I'm going to close the audit filter here. And I would like to cover the printing. So if I click on the plans page here, I can click the print button right here, and printing will currently print the current page view of whatever I'm looking at. If I want, I can print all pages, or I can print all pages with takeoff. And if I tell it to turn on the legend for all those pages and preview it, you have to preview it in order to print it. It builds the printing, and here's the pages with the takeoff. When I do a print preview for this page right here, and I turn on the legend, print all pages with takeoff, and I turn on the legend, by default, when I print preview, the legend will always put itself in the upper left-hand corner like this. So I'll go down to my next page. So it by default parks itself in the upper left-hand corner. If you decide that on this page you want the image legend to be down here in a different location, the way we do that is we go to the page where we want to turn on the image legend, and the image legend is turned on under the annotation tools, upper right hand corner here, if you can see this. And I'll go to the image legend. It puts itself there by default. If I move this down to here, now whenever I print, and I print all pages with takeoff and preview it, you'll see that it puts the image legend where I moved it on that page. So by default, it'll put it in the upper left-hand corner unless you specifically go to that page and turn the image legend on and move it where you want it. Then on that particular page, it will be where you placed it. The last tab that we'll review in our Quick Start Takeoff video will be the Assemblies All tab. All remaining tabs will be covered under the Quick Start Estimating video. This gives you a list of all of the assemblies that you took off while working on the Plans tab. You can, of course, right mouse click and group these by any of these selections here. Also, if you select an item, you can double click to open the assembly, you can duplicate it, or you can delete it. One word about deleting assemblies: if I try and delete an assembly, you can see here I have 6,274 lineal feet that occurs on these pages over here in these quantities. If I try to delete this, it's going to ask me, are you sure? It's going to give me a warning. If I click delete, it gives me a final warning and makes a tone. This is saying that it's going to remove it from the bid and it cannot be undone. So when you see this message, please take a second look. I'm going to cancel this. A very interesting thing about the assembly list is I can go down and take any particular item, like my typical corridor bulkhead ceilings here. I see a list of all of the locations, all the pages and quantities where that occurred. If I wanted to go look at one of those, I can select a level. I'll pick the page A608 West and double click this. This will take me over to that page, highlight those assemblies on that page so I can review the takeoff. That concludes our Quick Start Takeoff video. The next video, Quick Start Estimating, will cover all the remaining tabs that we didn't in this video.